Tuesday, 2:47 p.m. A pale afternoon sun filtered through the windows. The main lobby of the Elmbrook Club was so quiet it felt as though even a breath needed permission. Light from the crystal chandeliers shimmered against the Italian marble floor, casting somber reflections. This was not a place one entered by mistake. A solidly built black man, around 42 years old, stepped through the revolving door with a silent but weighty presence. He wore a navy blue suit, impeccably tailored. There was no logo, no jewelry, only the quiet presence of confidence. His name was Julian Carter. And the only thing he wanted at that moment was to walk into private meeting room number 9, which he had reserved the day before. But at the reception desk, Emily Tran, a woman who had stood behind that counter for over 7 years, immediately tensed her facial muscles. With her experience, this man was a stranger. No membership card, no familiar signs, and more importantly, not the type who belonged in this setting. "I'm sorry, the service entrance is in the back." Her voice was soft but steel-edged. Julian paused. He wasn't angry. Nor was he surprised. He had seen this too many times. "I have a reservation. Room number 9. Name's Carter Julian." Emily froze. She quickly scanned her computer screen. A line appeared. J. Carter. Private room 9. 3:00 p.m. Party of 2. She frowned. "The booking is under J. Carter. Not sure if that's you." Julian gave a slight nod. "Yes, it's me." A middle-aged woman sitting not far away wearing a white sweater, pinned-up hair, and a pearl necklace was live-streaming, her eyes gleaming excitedly. "Drama at Elmbrook Club. Something's about to go down." Her phone screen blinked red, and the viewer count started to climb. Emily gripped the keyboard tightly. "I'm sorry, but this is a private club. Guests without membership cards are not allowed to stay." Julian looked her straight in the eye. "I don't need a card. I have a meeting, and I paid to secure that right." Behind him, Tom Ruiz. The head of security began stepping out from the hallway on the right, his eyes scanning the scene. In just a few seconds, the lobby air would shift from suspicion to confrontation. But Julian didn't move. No raised voice, no sharp protest. Just the patience of a man who was far too used to being misjudged at first glance. 2:51 p.m. The wall clock gave a faint chime. Each tick echoed like the thud of a heartbeat slowly draining away patience. Julian Carter remained still, his hands resting lightly on the reception desk, as if nothing mattered more than standing exactly here, exactly now. Emily tried to conceal the awkwardness that was beginning to show at the corners of her lips. "You don't understand our rules," she said, her voice low but sharp. "We don't allow external guests to use premium services without an accompanying member." Julian didn't respond. Instead, he quietly pulled out a slim leather wallet from the inside pocket of his suit. He opened it unhurriedly without show. Inside was a black American Express Centurion card, a first-class boarding pass from JFK to Tokyo Seat 2A, and a business card that bore nothing but a name. Julian Carter. There is no title, no company, just a name that could make people uncomfortable if they understood the language of the silent elite. Emily glanced at it briefly, said nothing. No acknowledgement, no denial. She pressed a small button beneath the counter to activate an internal alert. There was no alarm, and there was no noise, but just enough to signal to the security team, "Situation requires attention." To the right, Tom Ruiz, who had been head of security at Elmbrook for over 20 years, stepped forward. Black suit, gray tie, wireless earpiece. His sharp eyes moved quickly from the card in Julian's hand to his polished Italian shoes, then back to the calm expression on the man before him. "Is there a problem?" Tom asked. This guest claims to have a private meeting room reserved, but he has no membership card and refuses to leave, she answered, her eyes still glued to the computer screen. Julian nodded, glancing at the clock, 2:53. In 7 minutes, my business partner will arrive. His name is Koji Nakamura, Japanese. He flew in from Tokyo to meet me, and I will not leave this lobby until he arrives. Koji Nakamura. A whisper echoed from a distant corner where the livestream screen still glowed. Koji Nakamura sounds familiar. A comment appeared. He's the CEO of Nakamura Venture Group, net worth $4 billion. Emily froze. She looked at the screen and then at Julian as if she were seeing him for the first time. Tom said nothing, but in his mind the puzzle pieces began to align. Julian's demeanor. The black Amex. First-class boarding pass. And now a business partner who could make the Elmbrook Club reshuffle its very foundations. May I see your ID? Tom asked. No longer cold, just cautious. Julian calmly pulled out a driver's license and handed it over with both hands, a gesture of deliberate courtesy. Tom took it and glanced over it. The name was Julian Carter. The address was Central Park, West Manhattan, one of the most expensive streets in America. He gave a slight nod and returned with no further comment. On the other hand, Emily clung to what little authority she believed she still held. Regardless, she said, we still need to confirm that you made the reservation. Someone could have used the same name. No one uses my name without permission. Julian replied, his tone even. 2:56. 3 minutes left. The woman live streaming now had over 900 viewers. Comments were pouring in. That's discrimination. Why don't they check the confirmation email? Who is this guy so calm? Elmbrook's gonna have to apologize publicly, watch. From the elevator, a woman emerged. She was Sophia Grant, senior manager of the Elmbrook Club. She had short brown hair, a beige suit, and eyes as sharp and swift as a paring knife. What's going on here? She asked, glancing at Emily, then shifting her gaze to Julian. Julian turned, nodded gently. I'm Julian Carter. I reserved meeting room 9, and I was invited here. Sophia stepped forward and looked at Emily's screen. Then she froze. The words were clear. J. Carter, room 9, 3:00 p.m., party of 2. A heavy silence fell, tense as a drawn bowstring. This is the right person, Sophia said aloud. And the right room? Emily's eyes quivered slightly. She pressed her lips together, but it was too late. 2:59 p.m. The elevator opened again. A petite Asian man dressed in a flawlessly tailored dark gray suit stepped into the lobby. Behind him were 2 assistants. Everyone fell silent. Julian spoke a single sentence. Good afternoon, Mr. Nakamura. It's an honor to meet you here. 3:00 p.m. The elevator came to a complete stop. Its doors slid open with a ding just loud enough to draw every gaze in the lobby, and then the man stepped out. No need for an introduction, no business card. The entire space seemed to understand Mr. Koji Nakamura had arrived. He wasn't tall or imposing, but his steps carried the presence of someone whose decisions had once shifted markets. He wore a perfectly tailored gray suit, a crisp white shirt collar, and a neatly knotted silver tie. In his left hand was a slim Samsonite briefcase. His right hand rested casually in his trouser pocket. Julian Carter stepped forward and gently extended his hand. Welcome to New York, Mr. Nakamura. Koji lifted his head, his eyes sweeping over the entire scene briefly from the 3 security guards standing motionless to the woman still live-streaming to the black man in the navy suit standing in front of him with a confidence that required no explanation. He shook Julian's hand, said nothing, but the subtle nod that followed sketched out a respect that had just been established. Sophia, the senior manager, swallowed hard. She reached for her phone, about to make a call, when Julian turned to her, his voice low but unwavering. Room 9. I believe it's ready. Then he looked at Sophia. No anger. No show of dominance. Just a question, smooth as a razor. Are we permitted to enter? Sophia froze, then nodded. Yes, this way, please, gentlemen. Emily stood frozen. Her face had gone pale as though the blood had drained from her skin. She didn't look at Julian. Didn't look at Sophia. Only into the empty air before her where her judgment, assumptions, and authority had collapsed in a single note. Julian didn't glance her way. Not a word of reproach. He turned, walking alongside Nakamura toward the meeting room, leaving behind a lobby full of stares, some admiring, some ashamed, and some deeply unsettled. 3:02 p.m. Inside meeting room 9, the curtains were drawn wide open, revealing a windswept view of Central Park. A long, glass-topped conference table, chairs upholstered in ivory leather. On the table, water, tea, and a leather-bound project proposal laid out with care. Nakamura took his seat at the head of the table. Julian sat across from him. The two assistants quietly retreated to a corner. Silence settled. I heard an argument in the lobby as I entered. Nakamura said, his voice even. Is everything all right? Julian poured tea. His hands are steady. His gaze was unwavering. No argument. Just a situation that served as a system test. Nakamura smiled with a subtle expression, half amused, half analytical. And did your system pass the test? Not today, Julian replied. But perhaps from tomorrow onward, things will be different. Koji gave a faint nod. His eyes said more than his words. 3:08 p.m. Back in the lobby, Amanda, the woman who was live streaming, ended the video with 1-800 viewers watching live and thousands of shares already circulating. She stood up and walked over to the front desk, where Emily had still not moved from her position. She live streamed the whole thing just now. A staffer whispered nearby. Emily said nothing. On Amanda's phone screen, the live stream title was clear. When you block the CEO from his building. And below it, a flood of comments. He handled that with total class. I thought I was watching a drama series. Who needs Netflix when real life is this wild? Elmbrook owes him a public apology. 3:12 p.m. Back in the meeting room, the discussion had begun. Julian laid out a strategic partnership proposal between the two hotel chains, including a key initiative integrating a bias-free guest experience standard into all locations under both brands. We're not just partnering to make money, Julian said. We're partnering to shape how this industry treats its guests over the next 20 years. Nakamura nodded. Do you believe today's meeting proved that point? Not enough, Julian replied. But it made one thing clear. Change can't just be an internal slogan. It has to begin with every word, every glance, even in the lobby. 3:15 p.m. Sophia knocked on the door and stepped in. There's something you need to know. The media is starting to call, and the video is spreading at an incredible pace. Julian glanced at his watch. It's begun. He turned to Nakamura. There's going to be a media storm, but I'm not afraid. Nakamura sipped his tea, eyes sharp as glass. Because you were prepared. Julian smiled. No, because I've endured it all my life. 3:17 p.m. The meeting room was so quiet that the wind from Central Park could be heard through the glass. But that calm didn't last. It was followed by a sudden cascade of sounds, ringing phones, buzzing messages, and emails flooding in. The atmosphere shifted, as if someone had flipped a master switch and alerted the entire building. Sophia re-entered, phone in hand, her expression urgent. Julian. The media's calling. CNN Business. The New York Times. Even BuzzFeed. They all know. Koji Nakamura glanced toward Julian, his eyes asking silently, The world knows now. Julian gave a slight nod. I knew it would happen. I didn't expect it so soon. Sophia lowered her voice. A clipped version of the live stream is circulating with subtitles added. The headline reads, Black CEO denied entry to his building. It's currently trending number 2 on X, 3:23 p.m. Down in the lobby, employees had gathered around their phone screens. Some gasped as they recognized Julian's face in the video, calm and composed, surrounded by security and doubtful stares. Some looked uneasy. Others quietly turned away. Emily, still at the front desk, hadn't moved. Messages began pouring in. You're trending, not in a good way. Does the company know yet? Delete your LinkedIn fast. She tapped play on the video. Amanda's voice rang out clearly. This man never raised his voice, never caused a scene. He arrived on time, in the right place, and he is the CEO of this company. Emily put her phone down. She had never imagined that her actions, conditioned by internal standards and quiet biases, could lead to something so enormous. 3:30 p.m. Inside the chairman's office, an emergency Zoom meeting was underway. On screen were the board members of Meridian Hospitality Group, the parent company behind the hotels, private clubs, and the building where Julian now sat. Chairwoman Victoria Sterling spoke, her voice taut as a drawn wire. Have we confirmed? Did Julian Carter, the CEO, deny the person? Not only confirmed, replied legal counsel Chen. He's currently on the 9th floor meeting with Koji Nakamura, and that video has surpassed 1 million views in under 20 minutes. A finance director cut in. Our stock is down 3%. We need to respond immediately. Victoria nodded, then turned to the communications team. Prepare a statement. No deflecting. No excuses. Julian is not just our CEO. He is the moral face of this company. 3:34 p.m. Back in the meeting room, Koji Nakamura sat with his arms folded. He was still calm, but his gaze was no longer just observational, but scrutinizing. You understand what's happening outside will directly affect our deal? Julian nodded. I understand perfectly. Then what will you do? Explain. Retaliate. Stay silent and wait for the storm to pass. Julian opened his laptop and shared his screen. On it was a draft of a press release direct with no evasions. We do not deny what happened. We do not hide our mistakes. We apologize to Mr. Julian Carter and every guest who has ever been misjudged by their skin appearance or status. We will change, and we begin that change today. Koji read it through. Then he smiled. You don't need me to believe the promise. You need me to believe the conviction. Julian closed the laptop. If I don't act today, then I'm not worthy of leading any organization. 3:41 p.m. On social media, the hashtag Meridian Bias began trending heavily. But alongside it, another one surged with power, #dignity, in action. People who had faced similar moments began sharing their stories. Former employees fired under vague circumstances reposted old emails. High-profile guests directly tagged Meridian asking, "What's your response?" Within minutes, Julian's brand stood on the edge of a media firestorm, under a new kind of spotlight, one that saw him as a victim and a leader who didn't flinch from the dark. 3:46 p.m. The elevator opened on the 10th floor. Julian stepped out alongside Koji Nakamura. Neither spoke during the short ride up, but the air between them had shifted, no longer a preliminary meeting between business partners. Still a conversation between two men who knew a corporation's future, and perhaps an entire industry, was tilting beneath their feet. They walked straight into the executive strategy room, where a giant LED display showed 3 columns of live data, social media engagement, real-time stock price, and media coverage per minute. The numbers shifted every second like the pulse of a giant organism reacting to a truth just exposed. Sophia stood near the data board, reading a report from legal. "We're facing 3 potential lawsuits," she said briskly. One from a civil rights NGO, one from a former customer with a similar case, and one from a former employee terminated under unclear circumstances. Julian nodded quietly, not surprised. He knew that if what had happened to him had happened before, it would have left a trace. Koji looked at Julian. "I thought you were the CEO, but today, you must prove your right to exist in the building you lead." Julian didn't respond. He turned toward the left screen where bright red letters glowed. Meridian bias. 1.2 million mentions in just 58 minutes. 3:58 p.m. An assistant walked in holding a thick file. "Mr. Carter, here's the log of internal complaints from the last 24 months. 18 incidents similar to what happened today." Julian sat in the leather chair, flipping through the pages swiftly but carefully. Each line of text proved something he had long suspected, that politeness in elite settings could often conceal far more than words. He stopped at one page. Complaint handler. Sarah Kendrick. Status unresolved. Koji looked over his shoulder. "Did you know about this before I did?" Julian replied calmly. "But I needed to see the scale. I needed to see it with my eyes, to know how far we've let it go." 4:04 p.m. While the room buzzed with data reports and strategy, Amanda Hutchinson, the original live streamer, answered calls from 3 major television networks. Her voice trembled, not out of fear, but from the knowledge that she now held what every journalist dreams of: a story with the power to shake, guide, and force society to take a hard look at itself. "No," Amanda told CNN, "I don't want money for the clip. I want one promise that the full story will be told. No trimming, no softening." 4:11 p.m. Julian returned to the strategy room, standing before the entire leadership team. Starting tomorrow, he said, every meeting with a partner, client, or investor will include an experience monitor, unannounced, unnamed, silently observing how each interaction is handled. An HR executive stood up abruptly. "You want to monitor all of us?" "No," Julian replied. "I want all of us to relearn how to respect human beings before we try to act professional." 4:18 p.m. On Twitter, a statement from the official account of Meridian Hospitality Group was posted. "Today, we failed to uphold the values we claim to represent. We are sorry, and we are changing, starting with ourselves." The tweet quickly passed 300,000 interactions within the hour. 4:25 p.m. Koji stood by the glass window looking out over late afternoon New York. "I used to think the hospitality industry just needed cleanliness, punctuality, and good service," he said. "But today I realized the greatest trait is how a person keeps their dignity when they've been insulted." Julian stood beside him, eyes fixed on the data still rising on the screens. "Civility isn't silence in the face of injustice," he said. "It's how we respond with actions strong enough without ever needing to shout." 4:31 p.m. Floor 48, Strategic Boardroom. 12 chairs were arranged around a black mahogany oval table. The New York sky turned gray outside the glass, signaling a coming storm. Inside, the air was taut as a violin string. Julian entered. In front of him sat the board of directors, the holders of shares, voices, and power. Victoria Langford, chairwoman of the board, rose first. "We need to talk about what happened in the main lobby, Mr. Carter." "I need to speak to you as well," Julian replied, remaining standing. "But not just about what happened, about what's been happening for years and why it can never happen again." 4:33 p.m. David Cho, a longtime board member, frowned. You appeared on a national livestream, were questioned, and were seen as a victim. Yet you're the CEO. So are we facing a contradiction or a PR stunt? Julian looked him straight in the eyes. No contradiction, and not a stunt. This is the truth. No effects, no lighting. I was treated like an intruder in the headquarters of my company. Murmurs broke out. Victoria raised her hand for silence, and she asked, I'm not here to cry foul. I'm here to propose a complete overhaul. 4:36 p.m. Julian opened his laptop. On the large screen behind him, a chart appeared, 23 unresolved complaints, 18 cases indicating discriminatory conduct, $2.3 million in lost revenue from clients who never returned. We built an empire based on luxury service, but what we've been calling quality is often dictated by invisible biases about voices, skin color, dress codes, and who looks like a customer. 4:41 p.m. Amelia Reyes, CFO, interjected. I understand the ethical position, Julian, but this affects our stock. It's not about ethics, Julian cut in. It's economics. He moved to the next slide. Revenue dropped 12% at the 7 locations with the highest complaint rates. Client referrals fell 40% after every unaddressed incident. Bias doesn't just harm people, it burns through profit, he said slowly. We are losing money because of how we professionally discriminate. 4:45 p.m. Arthur Bianchi. A senior board member crossed his arms. What do you want? Julian. A public apology. A viral video. Or do you want us to fire half the company? Julian walked to the table, took out a black leather-bound document, and slid it toward Victoria. This proposal is for restructuring our personnel policies and corporate culture. It includes mandatory bias awareness training for all staff, anonymous reporting system for discriminatory behavior, real-time AI monitoring of customer interactions, periodic evaluations using Respect Index as a core KPI, a strict ban on customer profiling by intuition across all properties. 4:50 p.m. Victoria opened the document, skimming the main points. No one spoke for several seconds. Then she asked, And you believe the board will approve this? I don't need you to agree. Julian firmly answered. I need you to understand that if we don't do this in 6 months, we won't have customers to serve or employees with enough dignity left to stay. 4:55 p.m. Koji Nakamura appeared at the door of the boardroom. Julian motioned for him to enter. You've heard of Mr. Nakamura? Julian said. We're in talks for a $340 million merger. But there's one condition: the company must transform from the inside out. Victoria looked at Koji. Is that true, Mr. Nakamura? Koji nodded. We don't invest in companies that only know how to apologize. We invest in those who know how to learn and change. 4:58 p.m. Julian ended his presentation with one short statement. If I don't stand up for myself today, thousands more will be treated like I was silent tomorrow. And if we allow that, we don't deserve to lead anything. He sat down for the first time in the entire meeting. Silence enveloped the room. Then Victoria gave a slight nod. Call the vote. 5:00 p.m. The boardroom froze as if someone had drained all the oxygen from the air. The board of directors no longer looked at the documents before them. They were looking at Julian Carter, a 42-year-old black CEO who had just ignited the most profound reform in the company's history. Victoria Langford took a deep breath. We'll take a vote. But before that, she paused, eyes scanning the room. Does anyone have something to say? David Cho slowly stood up. I used to think the numbers, the contracts, the spreadsheets that were everything. But today I realize you can't calculate the value of dignity in Excel. I stand with Julian. Arthur Bianchi frowned. I'm not against change. I'm against being forced into change during a media storm, setting a precedent that every online crisis leads to a dangerous new policy. Julian said nothing, just looked him in the eye. Amelia Reyes spoke. I watched the live stream. I saw how you were doubted, surrounded, and threatened before you said a single wrong word. As someone in finance, I'm trained to assess risk. But the real risk is a company that can't see itself in the mirror. Silence filled the room. They all understood this was no longer just Julian's issue. This was the moment to redefine the company's identity. 5:08 p.m. Victoria placed her hand on the binder in front of her. Julian's reform proposal includes 5 key points, she said clearly. Each board member will vote either yes or no. The decision will be recorded in writing. We require an absolute majority to pass. David Cho. Yes. Amelia Reyes. Yes. Arthur Bianchi. Number Sarah Kim, HR executive silent until now. Yes. James Morrison. Marketing. Vote. Yes. All eyes turned to Victoria. She sat still for a few seconds, her hand gently gripping a cold teacup. I used to think maintaining stability was a leader's highest duty, she said. Today I realize the courage to correct mistakes is greater. I vote yes. 5:12 p.m. Julian didn't smile, didn't raise a fist. He nodded slowly, calmly, just as he had when he first walked into the boardroom. Thank you, he said. We'll begin implementation starting next week. Arthur stood up, pushing back his chair. I won't stand in the way, but I will monitor every step. Don't turn this into some shallow morality parade. Julian looked at him. I don't want a parade. I want a system. 5:15 p.m. As the board members exited, Koji Nakamura remained. He placed a hand gently on Julian's shoulder. You didn't just save a deal, he said quietly. You saved a company from rotting from within. Julian smiled faintly. I just picked up what others left behind. Honor, fairness, and patience. In Japan, we have a principle, Koji said. Honor isn't something you possess. It's something you give to others even when they don't deserve it. Julian nodded. Here we call that forgiveness, but it doesn't mean forgetting. 5:22 p.m. A communications aide rushed over as the two men prepared to leave the boardroom. Mr. Carter, the Today Show and CNN Business have confirmed interviews for tomorrow morning. They said, the whole country is waiting to hear from you. Julian picked up his phone. His inbox was flooded with messages and emails from journalists, CEOs, and even business students expressing gratitude. He looked at Koji. Now, we have to be ready. 5:26 p.m. The boardroom was empty. Julian entered the hallway, golden hour light casting long shadows through the glass-paneled corridor. He paused at the main lobby where it all began. Amanda the blogger was interviewing Chef Roberto. A new receptionist was assisting a black guest with a genuine smile. Julian stood there as a man, a CEO, a living witness. That change is challenging, but not impossible. Thursday, 8:00 a.m. Meeting room 3 at Meridian Hospitality's headquarters was no longer just for dry reports. Today, it was the launch pad of a historic experiment. On the large LED screen, a title appeared. Mandatory Training Unconscious Bias Recognition, Responsible Action. Julian Carter entered with Koji Nakamura. He wore no tailored suit, just a simple shirt with sleeves rolled up. He didn't want to preach. He tried to walk with them. We're not here to assign blame. Julian began scanning the room of nearly 50 key employees. We're here to notice what we've never seen, To hear what we've refused to hear, and to do what's right even when no one demands it. The room was still. No one expected a 42-year-old black CEO to speak softly and make their hearts heavy. 9:15 a.m. The session began with a simple exercise. Each person received a card with a stereotype. People in suits are the boss. Asians are good at math. Black men are here to deliver something. Everyone was to pick one they had once unconsciously believed. No one spoke at first. Then Amy, a white front desk manager, raised her card. People of color aren't members. All eyes turned. She bowed her head. I used to believe that, until the truth slapped me in the face. 10:30 a.m. In another room, the engineering team was testing the new AI system Julian had approved for $150,000. It used behavior tracking cameras and machine learning to record service patterns from eye contact to tone to how quickly staff approached guests. Not for surveillance, but to be alert to hidden biases. A screen displayed employee A approaches white guests in 10 seconds. For guests of color, 34 seconds. A small number, but a big truth. 12:00 p.m. Amanda Hutchinson, the blogger who live-streamed the incident, met Julian in the lounge. She had just signed a book deal for Dignity Under Fire, but she wasn't there to ask permission. She came to give thanks. I used to write for clicks, she said. Now I write so people will finally see. Julian nodded. You helped me more than you realize. Your live stream made me see dignity should never wait for permission. 2:00 p.m. The marketing team launched a new campaign, Hospitality Begins with Humanity. Short videos captured staff reactions during retraining. One clip showed head chef Roberto standing next to a Syrian sous chef saying, "In this kitchen, your background doesn't matter. If your knife's sharp, that's enough." The campaign spread fast. Other hotel brands began reaching out for training materials. Julian refused licensing fees. This value belongs to the industry, not just us. 4:00 p.m. An online meeting began with branch leaders from Tokyo, Berlin, and Cape Town. Julian introduced a new reporting system every month. Each location must submit a cultural integrity map documenting bias, incidents, reform progress, and local initiatives. There's no room for a culture of fear anymore, Julian said. We don't punish people for admitting wrongs. We fire those who protect them with silence. 6:00 p.m. In the main lobby of Meridian Club, a new brass plaque was mounted on the wall. It read, "A culture is only as strong as how it treats the least powerful among us." Julian Carter, CEO, Harold Whitman. A longtime club member stopped to read it. He smiled softly. This should have been engraved long ago. 7:00 p.m. In his private office, Julian sat alone looking out at the city lights below. He didn't see victory. He saw responsibility like a red light that refuses to turn off. The transformation had only just begun. His phone buzzed. A message from Koji Nakamura. I shared your story with our executive board in Japan. They want to apply this model globally. Thank you for being the first to stand. Julian set the phone down, reached into his drawer and pulled out a slip of paper, the handwritten note he had written the day he was humiliated in the club's lobby. It read, "Make sure no one ever has to go through this again." He folded it, placed it back in his wallet, and prepared for tomorrow. Monday, 9:30 a.m. On the LED screen in the main conference room, a chart displayed impressive growth figures. Q2 revenue up by 34%. New memberships increased by 68%. Customer satisfaction scores rose from 7.2 to 9.3. Julian Carter nodded quietly as the data team presented. But he knew numbers didn't tell the whole story. Behind every percentage point was a struggle, a whisper left unsaid, and a choice made in silence. "We've proven that change is profitable," Julian said. "But remember, when you dismantle an old system, it never collapses quietly." 10:15 a.m. Anonymous email. An email was sent to the board from an anonymous address. Meridian is sacrificing tradition to chase public sentiment. Some people do not deserve to be called guests. Some people are unfit to be in charge. Short, but chilling. Julian skimmed it, then deleted it without a word. He knew that real resistance never comes from anonymous names, but from the fear of losing privilege. 11:00 a.m. Interview with Wall Street Journal. "Do you think your response that day was too harsh?" the journalist asked, watching him closely. Julian didn't flinch. "If defending dignity is considered harsh, then I hope this industry gets more people who are harsh like me. And do you have anything to say to those who think these new measures are too sensitive?" Julian looked straight into the camera. Sensitivity never hurt anyone. Indifference did. The interview hit the front page within hours. The response was overwhelming support flooded in, but so did backlash. 1:00 p.m. Call from a major shareholder. Julian, a deep, powerful voice, said through the speakerphone, "You're turning this company into a social campaign. That's not what I invested in." Julian answered calmly, "I believe you invested in the future, and the future doesn't tolerate outdated values dressed as tradition." "Be careful, young man," the voice warned. "The boardroom door isn't always open." Julian smiled. "Luckily, I've learned not to ask permission to walk through the right door." 3:00 p.m. Internal meeting. Branch. Feedback. The Texas branch was facing backlash from a group of longtime members. 23 canceled their memberships after watching Julian's speech on equality in service. "That's all right," Julian said. 23 departures may create space for 100 people who deserve to be welcomed." A regional director hesitated. But they were long-term clients. Julian met his gaze. Being here for a long time doesn't mean being right. Longevity is not immunity from standards. 5:45 p.m. Message from Koji Nakamura. "A rival hotel group is trying to discredit our reform initiative," Koji wrote. "They're calling it nothing more than a PR stunt." Julian typed back, "The truth doesn't need polish. Let them smear. When the wind blows, only trash flies." 8:00 p.m. Live talk with global staff. Julian hosted a live stream for all employees worldwide. No script, no bullet points. He just retold the story of that day. He didn't linger on the pain. He focused on the awakening. He didn't blame individuals. He opened the door to accountability. "We can't fix the past," he said, "but we can make tomorrow more worthy than yesterday." At the end of the session, a message came from a new employee in Brazil. "For the first time in my life, I feel I belong somewhere that doesn't make me hide my name, skin, or gender. Thank you, sir." Julian set the phone down. His eyes welled. 9:30 p.m. CEO's office. The city lights shimmered through the glass wall. Julian stood alone. No music, no words, only the ticking of the second hand. The fight wasn't over. Backlash would come. The ones scared of losing power would scream louder. But that didn't matter. Because Julian knew when you change a system, you don't do it to please anyone. You do it because some people no longer have time to wait. Friday, 2:00 p.m. The Meridian Hospitality boardroom was filled with daylight from ceiling-high windows. Julian Carter entered in a dark gray suit. No tie. He didn't need accessories to prove his authority. His gaze was calm. His chin slightly lifted, and he walked along the 12-meter walnut table where 8 board members waited. No one spoke. No need. They all knew why this emergency meeting was called. 2:02 p.m. The interrogation begins. Julian chairwoman. Sterling began. Are you aware that our principal shareholder has requested a full review of the reform plan you initiated? Julian nodded slightly. I am. I also know that in the same time frame we broke 3 revenue records, doubled new membership growth, and received over 50 partnership offers from top global institutions. So, you believe the criticisms are unfounded? Julian paused for a moment. I believe some people fear losing power so much they'll sacrifice integrity just to keep their seat. No one responded, but some fists clenched subtly. 2:15 p.m. A sealed envelope. The board secretary entered and handed Julian a golden envelope from the company's private legal office. Julian opened it. A letter of resignation was not his own. Sarah Chen. Handwritten. The pen strokes are graceful and deliberate. I used to believe that tenure was a shield. I was wrong. Tenure doesn't hide prejudice. I resigned to make space for someone representing Meridian's values. Julian looked up. I didn't ask for this, but it's proof real change doesn't need to be forced. It spreads through truth. 2:27 p.m. Online with 47 global branches. A giant screen lit up. Regional directors from London to Cape Town, Tokyo to Rio were all online. Julian looked into the camera. I'm not speaking to branch offices today. I'm speaking to individual people. He paused. Because that day in the Meridian lobby, if I had lost my composure or my clarity, I might have become exactly what they expected, and we all would have lost. A system doesn't change through slogans. It changes through correct choices made every day, despite the pressure, despite the judging eyes. And today, I can proudly say, we chose right. 3:12 p.m. Call from Tokyo Kenji. Yamamoto called from headquarters. Julian, he said in his steady tone, this morning we approved a $60 million investment to expand our international HR systems modeled after Meridian, just as we agreed. And I have one more proposal. Let's establish a diversity leadership institute based in New York. And I think it should bear the name of the person who inspired it. Julian went silent. His throat tightened. The Julian Carter Institute, he asked softly. Kenji chuckled. I think it's well deserved. 4:00 p.m. Global Partnership Press Conference. Julian stepped onto the podium. Cameras from CNN, BBC, and NHK turned toward him. He carried no notes. Only his heart and what had unfolded. 3 months ago, I was asked to leave the building my company owns, because my appearance didn't match unspoken expectations. Today, we announce a global alliance for equity in hospitality, a network across 73 countries, a new business model where ethics are a competitive advantage, because sometimes humiliation isn't the ending. It's the opening chapter to doing what's right. 6:00 p.m. CEO's office. On the desk, the quarterly financial report, a resignation letter, dozens of new membership requests, and one framed article by Amanda Hutchinson. A black man was told to leave the building he owns. He didn't yell, didn't retaliate. He stayed calm. He rebuilt the entire system so no one else could go through it. That's real power. 9:30 p.m. Julian leaves the office. Before exiting, he turned back and looked at the company's logo etched in glass Meridian Hospitality Group. Below it, a new slogan was added just days ago. Respect isn't optional. It's our foundation. Julian smiled. There was nothing left to say. Only work to keep making it true.